This is a Jmix exclusive.
Hello all, this is Jmix here, and this is part 2 of what really happened with Mark Anthony Bell and the Death Row Christmas Party. In this segment we're going to focus on what Tupac's role in the incident was, and how I'm going to do this is I'm going to show you the report, which is several pages long. It's about a dozen pages long, but I'm going to highlight the instances where Tupac was spoke about. So we're going to start by giving you a little background about exactly what happened at the notorious Death Row Christmas Party. On 12/20/96, I interviewed Roderick Nixon at the Hollywood station. Nixon stated he was an independent photographer and his office was in New York. In the past, he worked for Death Row Records taking pictures. He was contracted to take the pictures at the Death Row Records Christmas party. He flew to Los Angeles. He knew his friend Mark Bell was in Los Angeles and they met up together. They decided to go to the Death Row party together. He said he had an invitation, but Bell didn't. They went to the Death Row Company office on Wilshire Boulevard. Bell was informed that it wasn't a problem and they would let him in at the door. Bell had borrowed his friend Lennox's car. They arrived at the party in Hollywood Hills at about 2200 hours, which is 10 o'clock at night for those that don't know military time. He went about the party taking pictures. Later, Suge Knight arrived at the party. Publicist George Papa G. Price told him to stay close to Knight and Shakur and to get some good pictures. He saw Knight talking to Bell. He heard Knight tell Bell to come with him. Suge Knight, Tupac Shakur, Mark Anthony Bell, and some others walked upstairs. He grabbed Bell and asked him what was going on. Bell didn't say anything, so everyone went into the VIP room. He went into the room and saw Bell on the corner. There was another photographer from the New York Times in the VIP room. Suge Knight kicked everyone out of the room. When he left, Bell was still in the corner. I want to take the time to point out that in the VIP room, as it says right here, that there was a photographer from the New York Times. This is another example of why a deduction can be made that security was present in the room. The New York Times is not going to be given carte blanche to go into the VIP section unless there's obviously some security there. But I digress. Now back to this photographer from the New York Times. He thought that something was wrong, and he was told to clear the hallway. So this photographer goes downstairs, and he was concerned. So he called up one of Bell's friends in New York, and he walked into the living room and was looking at the upstairs balcony when he saw Bell spread out on the balcony. Now this is an inside balcony that overlooks basically what looks like a ballroom floor, but it's on the inside. He's not hanging out the outside. This balcony is an upstairs balcony, so people in the party down below could actually see the situation that is being laid out. And here is where Tupac comes in. There was a lot of movement. He saw Tupac Shakur making a stabbing motion at Mark Anthony Bell. Then he saw another male black assaulting Bell. The suspects moved Bell away from the balcony out of his sight. Knight then came to the opening and straightened out a Christmas tree. A second person was helping Knight. Now this isn't Tupac, this is another person. He thought Bell's life was in danger. He left the party and took the car and went down the hill. He saw a police officer and stopped, and he told the officers that his friend was at the Death Row party and Knight was trying to squeeze him for information. He thought his friend was being stabbed. Now, he's attributing this to the stabbing motion that he saw by Tupac Shakur. He told him that Bell was going to be killed. The officers left and he continued down the hill. He then tried to get in contact with Bell's friends. He didn't know where to take the car. He called Bell's friends in New York and they contacted Lennox. Lennox then called him on his cellular. While he was telling Lennox what had happened to Bell, Bell showed up at Lennox's house. Lennox gave Nixon directions to his house in West Covina. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into this report. I'm going to go all the way back to about page 4. And what I'm going to read to you is Mark Anthony Bell's account in full of events of exactly what happened that night. And this account also mentions Tupac, but it's also going to provide a context for exactly why this incident took place. On December 20th, 1995, at 2:35 p.m., I interviewed victim Mark Bell at the Hollywood station. Bell reported that he was an independent promoter in the record industry. His office was in New York. He worked for different record companies all over the country. He has worked for Death Row Records approximately 30 times. He further stated that on 12/16/1995, Death Row Records was having a Christmas party in Hollywood Hills. He was in Los Angeles and his friend Roderick Nixon was contracted to photograph the event. He was going to the party with Nixon, but he didn't have an invitation. That evening, they went by Death Row Records office to see about getting an invitation. He talked to Roy, one of the managers, who told him that there wouldn't be any problem getting him into the party without an invitation. Roy said he would be there and he would get him in. Later that night, Bell, as previously stated, borrowed his friend's car and he and Nixon went to the party. They arrived there around 22:30 hours, which is about 10:30. Nixon went throughout the party taking photographs, and around 2 o'clock in the morning, one of the members of Death Row Records, Marion Suge Knight, arrived with his entourage. Knight made his rounds through the party. At one point, Bell was next to the dance floor when Suge Knight approached him. Suge Knight said, "Why didn't you cooperate previously?" What they're referring to is something that actually shows up earlier in the report, which is that Death Row had tried to solicit information of where Sean Puffy Combs lived and where his family lived. And apparently previously Mark Anthony Bell refused to do it and said that he didn't even have that information. So Suge asked him, "Why didn't you cooperate?" Responding to Suge Knight, Bell said he didn't know anything about it and he didn't have any information. He told Suge Knight that Puffy had an office in Manhattan and he could get the number from the phone company and anybody could call him directly. Knight said to come upstairs where they could finish their conversation. So Bell followed Knight upstairs to the VIP room. Nixon came up to him and asked if everything was okay. He said yeah, but he gave him a bad look. When they got into the room, Knight told everybody to clear out. Norris, one of Knight's assistants, moved everyone out. Norris was outside the door with the door closed. So this shows that Norris was not inside the room at the time. Even though he's listed as one of the suspects, Norris was standing outside. So left in the room were Suge Knight, Tupac Shakur, and Dr. Dre. A male with gold teeth, and this police report refers to him as Gold Teeth, and 2 other male blacks. These are what we allege off-duty police officers working for Suge Knight. Now, for argument's sake, I will concede the point that at least one other of these men may have been a member of Homeboy Security. Suge Knight pulls out a chair in the middle of the room and tells Mark Anthony Bell to have a seat. Knight pulled up a chair and sat in front of him. Suge Knight again started questioning him about Puffy Combs and why he didn't cooperate with him previously. Bell again told him that he didn't want to get involved. Suge Knight continued to question him. Now Tupac Shakur would whisper into Suge Knight's ear and Suge would ask more questions. Now this changes it a little bit. Instead of Suge Knight being the big bad wolf and the driving force behind this whole thing, it looks like not only was Tupac complicit with it, but may have been leading this situation on. So once again, Shakur would whisper into Knight's ear and he would ask more questions. During this period of time, who the police refer to as suspect Gold Teeth, was acting hyper and would come up to him and hit him in the side of the face. Gold Teeth said, "This is for the person who died." This would be referring to Jake Robles, who was shot in Atlanta. And Gold Teeth was threatening to end Mark Anthony Bell's life. Gold Teeth hit him 3 times, and Suge got up and went to the bathroom. Moments later, he returned with a glass with fluid in it. Knight gave him the glass and told him to drink it. The glass was warm, and Bell believed that the fluid was urine. Gold Teeth hit him again in the face. He dropped the glass, he was in fear of his life, and he broke for the balcony, hoping he would jump to safety or maybe someone would see him. Now keep in mind, this is an inside balcony. This is not an outside terrace. And this is where the previous report of the witness comes into play, because the witness was inside the party. So Mark Anthony Bell is in fear of his life and he breaks through the balcony, hoping he could jump to safety or someone would see him. The whole group immediately chased after him. They caught him at the guardrail before he could get over it. Suge Knight was on his left, grabbing his shoulder and his leg. Tupac Shakur was on his right side and was hitting him on the neck. The other people were hitting him and trying to pull him off the guardrail. He held on for about 30 seconds before they finally pulled him off. Then they drug him back towards the door. Everyone was hitting and kicking him and throwing things at him. Suge then says, "Body blows only." So Gold Teeth got him in a chokehold and choked him for about 45 to 60 seconds, and he almost passed out. He played lifeless on the floor. Someone removed his watch from his left wrist. Everyone backed off. During the struggle, his gold chain had come off or was torn off. The suspects were talking about taking his diamond stud earring, but they didn't. All of the suspects, Suge Knight, Tupac Shakur, and who they are referring to as Gold Teeth, and at least one other individual. Keep in mind, there's 7 suspects. All of the suspects backed away from him. He got up. Suge Knight said, "You can be a part of this team. I can make you rich. Do you want to make $500,000 or $1 million? Do you have friends that could deliver?" Suge Knight's now acting like he was his best friend, and the beatdown didn't happen or that he didn't have anything to do with it. Suge Knight walked him to the bathroom and told him to clean himself up. He heard people talking on portable radios. Once again, this would indicate that security was present. Knight said, "If you want your jewelry back, call me tomorrow and we'll talk about it." Gold Teeth asked Knight, "Should I do him?" And we all know what that means. Knight said, "He's good." So the guy with the gold teeth came up to him and said, "You're lucky he said you were good." Suge Knight then told everyone to clean up the room. Bell washed his face. Norris still at the door. And Suge said, "Don't let him leave until he's cleaned up." Knight, Shakur, and Gold Teeth left. Short time later, Norris said he could leave. Now we're going to jump to the interview of a man named Lennox Barnes. Lennox Barnes was the person that Mark Anthony Bell borrowed the car from, as mentioned earlier in this video. Barnes had stated that Mark Anthony Bell was visiting from New York, and on December 15th, Bell was at his shop in downtown LA when he met his photographer friend. Bell borrowed his car and left with the photographer. So Barnes, the man who loaned Mark Anthony Bell the car, further stated that he was home asleep and he was awakened by his pager going off. He returned the call and found out it was Bell's family. They reported the photographer had called them and said Bell was in some kind of trouble. Later, he was able to contact a photographer on a cell phone. The photographer said Bell was in a room. He told the cops that they were checking on Bell. While he was talking to the photographer, Bell was at his front door. He told the photographer how to get to his house so he could return the car. Barnes reported that when Bell came in, he was limping. He had marks on his face. Bell told him that Suge Knight came up to him and was asking him questions about Sean Puffy Combs' parents and why he hadn't cooperated with him. They then went into the VIP room. Now, once in the VIP room, Suge Knight was in front of him asking him questions while someone else was beating him. Bell said that Tupac Shakur, Dr. Dre, Suge Knight, a guy from the office, and 3 or 4 other guys were in the room. That's right, 3 or 4 other identified guys were in the room. So we have Tupac Shakur, we have Dr. Dre, we have Suge Knight, we have Norris standing outside, and we have a suspect by the name of Gold Teeth. That leaves 2 to 3 other people. Kenner had stated that there were 2 off-duty cops there. And people asked the question, well, Kenner also said nothing happened, so, how can you believe what Kenner says? And the reason that I can believe what Kenner says about the off-duty cops is, as a lawyer, of course, David Kenner is going to say nothing happened. That's his job. But when he tells another attorney, hey, there was 2 off-duty police officers there, if pressed, David Kenner would have to provide the names of the 2 off-duty police officers that were there. So I think with the information given to you in this video, as well as the previous one, we can seriously deduce that there were off-duty police officers, or at the very least unidentified individuals, not only at the party, but in the room as well. Bell was surrounded and they were beating him up. Knight gave him a glass to drink. Bell said that they were going to hurt him real bad. Barnes asked Bell if he wanted to call an ambulance. Bell said no. He noticed that Mark Anthony Bell was weak. He observed that Bell had a cut on his left elbow, 2 scratches on his right arm, his left hand was swollen, his right ankle was swollen, and he had marks on the right side of his head. His eyes were red. The next day, took Bell to the airport medical center for treatment. And that pretty much ends Barnes' statement. So, to recap, what we know now is not only were there 2 to 3 unidentified people in the room, the claim that Norris was in the room is false. Norris was standing on the outside of the door. But now we know publicly that Suge Knight, along with Tupac Shakur, were the main aggressors that night. As always, I appreciate you guys taking the time to watch the video, and I'll see everybody on the next upload. One love, everybody.
This is a Jmix exclusive.
Whatever, shut up.